The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, released not that long ago, and the first gaming phone with that new processor is finally here. This is the new Red Magic 7, and it looks like it's going to be a beast for emulation. Quick disclaimer, Nubia sent over this Red Magic 7 for this review. All of the opinions in this video are my own, and no one from the company saw this video before it's uploaded here for all of you. There are a few versions of the Red Magic 7, but the one that I have here comes with the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 CPU and the Adreno 730 GPU. We have a whopping 18GB of LPDDR5 RAM, 256GB of UFS 3.1 storage, a dual-cell 4500 mAh battery, and a 6.8-inch AMOLED display with a 165Hz refresh rate and a resolution of 1080 by 2400. For connectivity, we have Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, and 4 or 5G depending on your market. All of this is running on Android 12. Out of the box, the UI is pretty standard for this company. I've gone ahead and cleaned up the main window, but I've kept a dedicated toggle for the fan because I find it much easier than using the pull-down menu. The Red Magic 7 comes pre-installed with your standard Google applications, and I've already gone ahead and installed all of the apps that I need for this video. I've changed the UI to dark mode, which looks nice on this AMOLED display. Inside the settings application, you'll see that this is a fairly standard Android experience. Most of Nubia's work has gone into the custom game software that they have made. After flipping a dedicated switch on the side of the phone, you'll be inside the Red Magic Game Launcher. After launching a game from here, you'll be able to pull out the menu on the side of the device to see the Red Magic OSD. This screen includes toggle options for a variety of functions like screen refresh rates, power profiles, fan controls, and many more. This time around, we have only 3 power profiles to choose from. Switching between these profiles will increase or decrease your CPU and GPU frequencies depending on the option that you choose, which can also have an impact on your FPS. I like to keep mine on the Rise mode for the best performance possible. The Red Magic 7 model that I have has a transparent back, like the Red Magic 6S, but they've made both sides transparent and included a metal strip down the middle. Because these designs are so similar, I assume that Nubia would use the exact screen from their older model, but that does not seem to be the case. Even though I don't personally like it, the most accurate profile on the Red Magic 7 is the P3 color mode. Using this mode, I was able to get around 94% coverage of the P3 color space. The screen in my 6S has 97.3 color gamut coverage with better accuracy in the red tones that are visible to the naked eye with the same mode. The RM7 is advertised as having a 700 nit screen, but I think you would need to use the auto brightness to get the screen that high. I was able to get a reading of around 640 nits using the manual slider. This is an improvement over the 590 nits in my 6S. The best feature of this display is the fact that it has a maximum 165Hz refresh rate. This is great for general use on the device, but the problem is that there are only a small collection of games that can support refresh rates over 60Hz, let alone at 165, especially when we look at the most popular titles that people want to play on Android. I can see this screen being more valuable in the future than it is currently. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is a new processor, and I've been looking forward to any improvements that it could bring to emulation on Android. I want to start off by comparing the Snapdragon 888 Plus to this new processor to see where the improvements are. Let's start off with Geekbench 5. If we look at the CPU scores, we can see that there's a slight improvement in the single-core performance, but the multi-core scores are essentially the same. This is only half the picture. If we look at GPU performance, we can see that the 8 Gen 1 brings a lot to the table with significantly better Vulkan performance on this Geekbench 5 test. You can also see this improvement in the OpenCL test. Moving over to 3D Mark, I was able to get a score of almost 10,000 with the Wildlife test running on the Red Magic 7. This is a huge improvement over my 888 Plus score. This improvement is also visible on the Wildlife Extreme test. Based on these results, I'm expecting that this new processor is going to be amazing for high-end emulation. Because the Red Magic 6S and the 7 are so similar, I want to do one more test so we can judge the thermal performance between these two processors. For this test, I'm using Genshin Impact on the highest settings possible, viewing the same static screen. We're going to start off by seeing how good the passive cooling is on these phones using their highest power profile with the fan disabled. We will then enable the fans to see the impact of the active cooling. Both phones have their screens set to maximum brightness, and they're being held on a phone holder about 6 inches from a table in a room with an ambient temperature of 20 Celsius. The results were pretty surprising. In the no fan test, both phones exhibit almost the same thermal curve, albeit at different temperatures. After 5 minutes, the 6S broke the 60 Celsius barrier, with the 7 lagging behind at 56 Celsius. After 30 minutes into the test, both phones reached their normalized temperatures, with the 6S sitting at 72 Celsius, while the 7 was at 66 Celsius. Throughout the entire test, both phones were at an average of 60 FPS, with some slight jank in the readings coming from the 6S. If we look at the GPU load of both phones, we can see that the 888 Plus is running at full load to get this performance, but the 8 Gen 1 is operating at only around 80% load. Unfortunately, this performance isn't free. The 8 Gen 1 in the Red Magic 7 uses about 1 watt more of power compared to the 888 Plus. It would have been amazing if this graph was also flipped like the others. In the active cooling test, we can see similar thermal curves. With a starting temperature of 71 Celsius in the 6S versus 66 in the 7, the active cooling was able to drop temperatures by around 5 Celsius. At this point, both phones were able to be held in the hand without discomfort. This tells us a few things. The first is that we can expect a lot more headroom on this new 8 Gen 1 chip with lower temperatures in this implementation, but we also have a higher power consumption ceiling to go with it. Thankfully, the new Red Magic 7 can be fully recharged very quickly. The model that I have did not come with the fastest charger that this phone supports, but I was able to get a complete recharge in around 30 minutes. I'm not primarily focused on Android gaming on this channel, but one of the things that I noticed while testing this new chip is that you are essentially going to be able to play any game that you can download on the App Store without any issues. I think we still have a couple of years before Android developers start targeting phones with the kind of performance that Gen 1 provides, so you can be assured that this chip will not be obsolete that quickly if you are mainly interested in using it for Android games. I will say that it's kind of unfortunate that we're locked to Android because this GPU would be amazing in Windows if we were able to install it like I did on the Udon Pro. What I care the most about is emulation, and this new processor does not disappoint. For this showcase, I'm doing something that I don't typically do. I'm going to use any and all widescreen options that are available in each system that I'm testing, as well as stretching 16:9 images to completely fill out this phone's panel if a native option does not exist. For SNES and Genesis, we have good results with BSNES HD and Genesis plus GX Wide in RetroArch. For N64, I've gone ahead and loaded up Mupen 64 Plus GLES 3-core, and I've coupled it with the 1080p wide adjusted setting. This gives you a 16:9 image with black bars on the left and the right side, so I stretched that image to fit the entire screen, and it looks really nice. If you are looking for some new games to try out for yourself, there are over 40 games in this showcase, and I've made sure to include some lesser known titles that I think you'll enjoy.
Get back here!
For GBA, we're sticking with RetroArch, and I'm using the MGBA core. Sega Saturn is a bit annoying to test on Android 12 if you don't have the paid version of Yaba Sanshiro 2, so I've only included 2 titles for this section. This emulator has its own scaling options that you can use, and the games that I tested ran well. There are a few options available to us for Dreamcast, but I tend to go with RetroArch because it offers a free widescreen and upscale option compared to others. For these games, I'm using Flycast with the rendering resolution set to 1440p and the widescreen hack enabled. It's kind of sad that it's the case with a phone this powerful, but I was still able to get better performance with the MMJR2 build of Dolphin versus the official client with this new Snapdragon processor. For these games, I'm using the latest build of this fork with the rendering resolution set to 1080p and the widescreen hack enabled. we are going to stick with the same emulator for Wii since we already had good performance with GameCube. Let's take a break from Nintendo for a bit and go over to PlayStation. Here is PS1 using DuckStation. I have the rendering resolution set to 5x native with widescreen hacks and PG/XP enabled.
Snake, you have to crawl to get through there. First, crouch down by pressing.
For PSP, we're using PPSSPP with the OpenGL backend and the rendering resolution set to 5x. I've also manually stretched out the 16:9 image to fill this screen. Obviously, this phone is powerful enough to play games like God of War and GTA, so I wanted to include some other PSP games that I don't typically test for this section. I tested 9 PS2 games for this section using the Ether SX2 emulator. I do not typically use increased rendering resolutions with this emulator, but I wanted to see how far we could push things. For these games, I tried to target 4x native resolution and only dropped from that point if the performance was bad. If the performance did not improve by going to 1x in the games that ran slow, I just kept the game at 4x, and you'll see that when we get to Dragon Quest. Based on my experience, the PS2 performance with this chip is much better than most of the handhelds that you can currently buy, including those that run Windows.
You can interrupt help desk messages by pressing the triangle. To disable help desk messages, please select options from your pause menu.
Mommy, I'm telling you, I saw on the map.
I don't think it's any secret that 3DS is in a pretty bad situation right now on Android. The official build has not had an update in a while, and it runs pretty bad on this phone. Thankfully, the MMJ build still gets frequent updates for some reason, and it runs much better on the 7. I was able to test games in this section at 4x resolution, with only some minor compilation stutters. I have manually stretched out the main 3DS screen to better suit this phone, and I've also mapped screen swap to one of my controller buttons to make it easier to use this layout. Besides PS2, Switch emulation is currently the bleeding edge of what is possible on Android. Until recently, there was only one option on the market for Switch emulation on Android, but it is locked behind a paywall with hardware DRM. Recently, the Skyline emulator has started making some improvements and it can now boot at least one commercial game. As you can see, they still have a ways to go here to catch up to the other emulator, but at least their work is free and open source. These kinds of simple 2D games don't have any issues on the other emulator, but support for 3D games is a mixed bag, even with this new processor. Other popular titles like Breath of the Wild can technically run, but that is reliant on you using lower game resolutions that look bad on the phones that are powerful enough to use this emulator. If you don't want to go this route, you can use fence hacks, which can improve the performance with the added cost of strange bugs. That's going to wrap up this coverage of the new Red Magic 7 with the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor. This processor has a lot of potential waiting to be utilized, and it is definitely a processor that I would want to use with active cooling due to how hot it can get under load with no fan. If you want more information about this, you can take a look at the non-affiliated link down below. If you want to see more videos like this, consider taking a look at one of the other videos on screen now. Happy gaming everyone, Taki out.